Good evening, folks. Freddie Vasquez. This is Friday, or today is Friday, January 13th. Friday the 13th, 2023. Tonight, we got an interesting podcast. Joining me, as always, on Fridays is Anthony DiMaggio, former Yonkers police lieutenant, to discuss the Ray Montero lawsuit. Very interesting, folks. Good evening, Yonkers. It's Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered. Tonight, the Ray Montero. Former Yonkers police officer Ray Montero once sued the Yonkers Police Department, the Yonkers PBA, and won. How does this tie into the Anthony DiMaggio case currently ongoing? Anthony, good evening. Sorry about the delay. I was hoping my camera would come on, and it did. And we're here. How's it going?
Good.
I'm interested. This is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. You know,
it should be tying a lot of stuff together. I guess, some of the things that you've been talking about, with your situation and specifically with John Mueller, the former police commissioner. And now you're going to hear it, not just from you, right? And this is what I like when I say something, but then other people kind of say it and validate me. And here, you're going to be validated, I think, with a lot of stuff that's in this lawsuit. Right? Am I right about that?
Well, I mean, I think so. I was in contact with Ray very frequently, in the early stages of what was going on with me. And, when I was reading through the lawsuit, the facts of the lawsuit on the Justia website, I was taking notes to fill in the blanks, some of the stuff that's not on this website here, filling some of the blanks with stuff that he had told me personally when he was explaining to me the way these guys operate and telling me what I should expect, how Mueller comes after people, what his tricks are. Towards the end of the podcast, we'll work in a story that he told me about when he went for his ridiculous psychological evaluation with a different doctor organization than the one that I went to, that they now use to send other people to.
Right, because he was actually, sent to a shrink, but he was fortunate because, he didn't have himself as the police commissioner, right? And I'm sorry, I should say he didn't have John Mueller, I should say, as the police commissioner, right? He had instead Chucky Gardner, who you described as a sweetheart. And so, that worked his benefit, and you'll get into that, and we'll get into that at that point. But all right, so I got the lawsuit up here. Where do you want to start? You let me know. I know you.
It's important to first understand why people should know about this. People who want to know about, who are interested in my story, because once you understand that he basically was warned by the courts about this kind of behavior, you'll understand why he freaked out when I brought an attorney to internal affairs instead of the union president, who he controlled, because he's got basically everything to lose. If you can get caught doing something like this once, apparently, I don't even think you should be able to get caught once, but apparently you can get caught once and just get warned by the courts, don't do that again. They call that qualified immunity.
Right.
But now he was caught doing it again. So his only self-preservation play is to get a non-disclosure agreement signed. And for that, he needs leverage, which means I have to go to a doctor.
Right, because he already had something like this on record, this lawsuit here, and he was already warned. And so he was in a desperate situation at this point, I guess.
This is all going to lead up to us going through the report and eventually getting to the agreement, or the agreements. There were several different versions that they wanted me to sign. One of them, at one point, I did actually make the mistake of signing on bad advice from my attorney, because he was acting in his own self-interest, not mine. We'll get to that point. But, when you see the end result of the doctor's appointment, which is the agreement that they slap down in front of you, you'll really see what it's all about. It'll really, hit home. But that's why it's important to understand this first, because you got to understand that this is a guy, if you're a one-strike offender, you don't want a second strike. Same thing in the street, right? When it comes to felonies, selling drugs, things like that, you can only have so long of a record before finally the judge just throws the book at you.
Yeah. 3 strikes you're out usually, right?
Right. So before we get into reading it, I thought maybe you would read it and I would fill in the gaps as we go along.
Sure.
We'll do it and you could read it and I'll just say like, all right, hold on a second, let me add something, But before we do that, why don't we go back to those pictures that we had gone through when I think like the 4th or 5th podcast that we did together. We could show the people who the players mentioned in this lawsuit are. Yeah, same pictures that I sent you a while ago, but I sent them to you again. Yeah. So these were the remaining Olsen nets on the day that that Mueller was promoted to commissioner. Brian Moran, who was one of the primary antagonists in this story with Ray Montero, was already retired at that point. Oddly enough, ironically, 3 weeks before he retired, I had a training day scheduled with him. And when you do training on the 4 to 12 shift, they send you for dinner. You get a dinner break, and me and him and Babe McCauley went up to Carlos. And we all had the chicken Valdestano up there because it's out of this world. Brian comes across like a very nice guy, but what you'll see here, and from what Ray told me, he's really not. He works for the. Oh yeah, I think your audio friend.
No, yeah, no. I'm letting you speak. That's why I turned it off. Just can you hear me? You hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brian Moran, he's in the other pictures. Right. So Brian's the one holding the beer right in front. And when he retired, when Mueller became the police commissioner, he got him a job with MHA, with the housing authority.
Oh, what's there? Okay.
Yeah. Some sort of, I don't know, investigator or security or something. Probably a 6-figure job on top of his already $150,000 pension. But
and that's Brian Moran.
Right. Now, oddly enough, the only guy who really didn't play a role in this Ray Montero case of any significance is Louis Venturino, the primary antagonist in my story. And the guy in the middle there, Detective John Donahue, he was a dear friend of theirs. He did play a role in one of the little sub stories that we're going to get into here. He worked in the video retrieval unit, so like that the crime scene on South Broadway that I was involved in. If the department wants a copy of that video, they'll send a guy like Don. He's retired now, but at the time he worked in the video retrieval unit. They'd send a guy like him to go work the equipment down in the store and burn a CD with the footage from inside at the crime scene and get it onto a disc and bring it back to the department. So he'll play a little role, but the 3 primary antagonists are Keith Olsen, the clown face creep who you see in the back there, and Brian Moran. Right.
I want to show this other picture here that you sent.
Yeah, that's from way back in the day, right?
And so Moran. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look at him here, Brian.
Yep. So Mueller, Moran, and Olsen. At the time, when all this was going on, Mueller had I guess he had played ball sufficiently with Amicone. I mean, that's how far this goes back. This goes back to Amicone.
Oh, okay.
And a police commissioner named Bob Taggart, who was 2 before Chucky Gardner. Right before Chucky Gardner was a guy named Edmund Hartnett, who Amicone had brought up from the city. He was a deputy inspector or some really high rank down in the New York City Police Department. And
I remember the name.
Yeah. Amicone had brought him in to replace a guy named Bob Taggart, who was kind of a quiet guy.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, this is the housing unit, right? Just really quick, tell me, what did the housing unit do? What was their primary objectives? I mean, obviously going into, the different housing, but like, give me a little thing of the housing. That was something you wanted to also be in, right, as well?
I was in it for a year. Yeah, a little over it.
Well, why did you want to be in it? What was it about the housing?
Honestly, it was just a really nice work chart. You work 3 days on and 3 days off. 3 days on, 3 days off, but you worked a 10-hour shift. So you worked extra hours during the day, during your work day, but you worked a lot less days, obviously. Now, I was going back to school at the time, back to Fordham University, trying to get my college degree. So it was a good schedule for me.
I
So
got
that's why I
you.
liked it. But
And
you know,
these guys did a lot of like housing unit, a lot of like drug stuff, like undercover stuff, dealing right. These guys dealt with a lot of street drug dealers and stuff.
yeah, there was a lot of that. I mean, the projects were, they were really hell on earth back then. Because my father was their boss at the time this picture was taken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was the commanding officer of that unit. And
Oh, wow.
this picture goes way back before all the stuff with Montero started. When all the stuff with Montero started, it was all over the control of the union. And at that point, Keith Olsen and Ray Montero were both working in the gang unit.
Mm.
This is like I'm talking about 2010.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this
Well,
picture is probably a good 10 to 12 years before even that.
wow. Yeah. Well, they look. I mean, they look like a lot younger there. You could really
Yeah,
tell they're
sure.
a lot younger. And the reason I asked is because again, I grew up on the Southwest side, and I know a lot of the guys there, and I was out there in the street, and there was always this talk of this group of guys, that would really rough some kids up out there in the
Right.
street. And I'm just wondering if these were the group of guys right here because they just
Well,
look
that
like.
could have been a lot of people back in the pre-Chucky era in the 90s. Things are very, very different now, as I said.
Yep. OMG, the webs that have been weaved.
Oh, we're going to weave a lot of webs tonight.
How many, if not all, these guys committed a DUI violation that night?
Only the ones that were driving, not the ones in the passenger seats.
that's,
Um,
that's that's funny. Well, let's get
yeah.
to the
Okay,
lawsuit,
go ahead.
right?
Sure. I mean,
Let me know. I mean, unless it's something else. I don't know. You tell me.
no, this is the appellate. See, what happened was, let me give you a little background about the lawsuit. When Ray filed the lawsuit for all this workplace retaliation that they had engaged in, and we're going to read about it, we're going to go into it. These three idiots went into court with Andy Quinn, and Keith had Andy Quinn on the arm, paid for by the union, and Moran and Mueller had some other attorney. Now, when they went in, this is a federal court because Ray sued them for First Amendment violations. Basically, what he said was they retaliated against me for taking part in the democratic process of running for union leadership, for speaking out against Keith Olsen at union meetings.
And this is not the really quick. This is not the first time that someone is sued here in the city of Yonkers or in County of Westchester because of issues with their job or being, wanting to be fired or being fired because of their political activity.
Right.
I just shared some stuff on Facebook with a cousin of mine, Erwin Vasquez, actually sister, Vinny Spano's best friend, who sued the county because of her political, activities. So yeah, it's very real. It's unfortunate.
And so when they went in their defense, it wasn't, oh no, he's lying, we didn't do any of that. It was, yeah, we did all that, but it wasn't a First Amendment violation because he was acting in his capacity as a public servant, not as a private citizen. And you have to be speaking as a private citizen in your capacity as a private citizen in order for First Amendment to apply.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just workplace issues,
Right.
And
right.
So initially, the federal court said, we agree. We agree with the defendants. They were asking for a summary judgment, basically saying, please throw this out because it's not a First Amendment violation. And the court initially said, yeah, we agree. Then Ray appealed. And upon appeal, the decision was overturned, basically saying that because it was union activity and it was not part of his regular duties.
Right.
And he's speaking out about things that affect the community, like the closure of the burglary unit, the domestic violence unit, things that he didn't like that management was doing and that Keith Olsen wasn't fighting them on. So because he was speaking, in that way, he was not acting, in the course of his professional duties, and he was speaking as a private citizen. Therefore, the First Amendment applied. Excuse me.
Right.
And
they overturned. And so what was going on there? Why was he speaking out about? I mean, why were they closing, down these different units and stuff?
Right.
What was going on?
All right, so let's get into it. Right. So at the time, like I said, Bob Taggart was the police commissioner. Eddie Armour was the president of the PBA. Keith Olsen was the vice president. Now, I remember when I was still in the PBA, I remember Eddie Armour at one meeting getting up and getting all fire and brimstone, pushing back at criticism that he was the guy who brought in EH. Edmund Hartnett was not a well-liked police commissioner. These days, people would probably look at him like he isn't so bad because he was, his heart seemed to be in the right place. They just didn't like his policies because he was like from New York City, and no one wanted to do things the New York City ways. And so at the time, it was Taggart was the commissioner, and Eddie Armour and Keith Olson, the PBA leadership, were making pushes with Amicone to get rid of Taggart and install their friend, their buddy, John Mueller, who was a lieutenant in the Special Investigations Unit at the time. Now, you can count the number of people on one or two hands that actually liked John Mueller and actually thought that he would be a good police commissioner. Okay, and two of them were Eddie Armour and Keith Olson. Ray didn't like the idea. So Ray approached Keith Olson. I think we remember him telling me at the racetrack. I don't know if they were working there or they were just hanging out there or whatever, because they were in the same unit. So they were basically like friends, And Ray tells him, I'm going to run against Eddie for the presidency, the PBA. And Keith says, well, I'm in line for that spot. I want that spot.
I'm in line.
Right. And the discussion took place. And Ray basically concedes and says, you've been the VP for a while. I work with you. I don't see the need to go to war with you. You should know what you're doing. You've been doing this a long time. So I'll concede the spot. You can take the presidency. I'll run for VP. And Keith tells him, well, I like Mike Farina for that spot. Mike Farina, ironically, is a detective mentioned in one of the emails. He's the ATF liaison at the detective division now. So he was one of the detectives that Breadstick mentioned in the email that he wrote, trying to defend his subordinates. But anyways, so Keith and Eddie, they start trying to bribe Ray, basically telling him, don't run against Farina. We'll hook you up. We're in tight with the commissioner. We got juice with the mayor. We'll get you a nice position somewhere. Whatever you want. But Ray wasn't interested. He wanted to run for, he wanted to be part of the union business. So he ended up running.
It seems like they already had their plan, right? This is like you said, that's how it is.
They always do.
They said next in line, and this is what happens, and even with the politics stuff, there's always someone already that they have lined up. And Ray Montero was kind of messing up those plans.
Yeah, he was throwing a monkey wrench in their plans, right? Right. So he was openly critical of Keith's policies. Right. At some point, Amicone makes good on his promise to the Olsonettes to get rid of Taggart. Only he doesn't replace him with Mueller. He brings in this guy, E.H. Edmund Hartnett from New York City. Why, I don't really know. That's something that Ray never really spoke to me about. I'm not even sure he would know. I'm sure Amicone had his reasons. But Keith runs against Gaga, as they called him, Mike Farina, and beats him. He runs on an anti-Mueller platform. This guy's no good for the department. We don't want him to be the commissioner, or at least that's what Ray told me. And I believe it because it's the truth.
Right.
And so he gets in as the vice president, and Keith Olson becomes the president, and they would basically feud at the meetings. Ray didn't think that Keith was fighting management on enough of their decisions. EH closed the burglary unit. He closed the domestic violence unit, a couple of other units. And, at the same time, the Olsonettes never gave up on their push for Mueller to become the commissioner. So they were still in that gear. Oh, okay. Well, now when EH leaves, it'll be Mueller.
Right.
And Ray would speak out against that too. And why don't you start? You can start reading some of it, and when it gets to the part where some things took place, Ray speaking out at the union meetings.
All right.
Then I'll ask you to stop, and I'll interject a little bit.
All right. Plaintiff appellant Raymond Montero appeals from a judgment entered in favor of defendant appellees, the city of Yonkers, Keith Olson, Brian Moran, and John Mueller by the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. Montero, a Yonkers police officer and former Yonkers Police Union official, alleges that the defendants violated his First Amendment right to freedom of speech by retaliating against him for criticizing management's decision by Yonkers officials during the course of 2 union meetings. The district court agreed with the defendants that because Montero's union speech was not made in his capacity as a private citizen, his union remarks were not protected by the First Amendment, and he could therefore not state a claim for retaliation against the defendant. We conclude that because Montero's union remarks were not made pursuant to his official duties as a police officer, he spoke as a private citizen for purposes of the First Amendment. We also conclude, however, that defendants Moran and Mueller are entitled to qualified immunity and that Montero has not alleged a plausible claim for municipal liability against the city of Yonkers.
That'll be very different in my case.
Right. Accordingly, the district's court judgment is affirmed in part, vacated in part, and remanded for further proceedings. And then it talks about these issues. SAG Circuit Judge, plaintiff appellant Montero, a Yonkers Police New York a police officer and former union official in the Police Association of the City of Yonkers, Inc., also known as the Yonkers Police Benevolent Association, the Yonkers PBA, appeals from an order of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, dismissing pursuant to Rule 12b-6 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure his First Amendment employment retaliation claim against defendants, appellees, the City of Yonkers, Keith Olson, Brian Moran, and John Mueller, the city defendants. Montero alleges that the city defendants violated his First Amendment right to freedom of speech by retaliating against him for criticizing management decisions by Yonkers police officials at 2 Yonkers PBA meetings. The district court held that because the speech at issue was not made in Montero's capacity, again, as a private citizen, his union remarks were not protected by the First Amendment. He could therefore not state a claim for retaliation against the city defendants. We conclude that because Montero's remarks were not part and parcel of his concerns about his ability to properly execute his official job duties, and these quote a case there, he spoke as a private citizen for purposes of his First Amendment right to free speech.
Right. So what they're saying is that this is not something that he had to partake in as part of his duties. He's going above and beyond to take part in something that has effects on the community, et cetera. And they'll get into a little bit of that, a little bit after.
All right. We also conclude, however, that defendants Moran and Mueller are entitled to qualified immunity and that Montero has not alleged a plausible claim for municipal liability against the city. Accordingly, we affirm the district court's dismissal of the plaintiff's First Amendment retaliation claim against defendants Moran, Mueller, and the city, vacate the district court's dismissal of the plaintiff's First Amendment retaliation claim and defendant Keith Olson, and remand the case for further proceedings. Background: as required in our review of a dismissal under Federal Rule Procedure 12b-6, we accept all factual allegations as true and draw all reasonable inferences in favor of the plaintiff. And it states case law. Montero's union remarks. Montero has been a police officer for YPD for more than 27 years. In January 2010, the Yonkers PBA, which serves as the official union for the YPD, held elections. Montero was elected vice president. Defendant Olson, a fellow Yonkers police officer, was elected president. Montero testified that Olson had opposed Montero's candidacy, favoring another police officer, Michael Farina, for vice president instead. Following the election, tensions between Montero and Olson increased dramatically. In June 2010, during a Yonkers PBA meeting, Montero criticized Olson's close relationship with then police commissioner Edmund Hartnett. He said that Hartnett's decision to discontinue several police units, those dedicated to investigating domestic violence and burglary, and the community unit dedicated for supporting the police athletic league, would adversely affect the YPD, the Yonkers PBA, and the surrounding community.
Hold on. All right. Let me just interject a little bit. So at that meeting, apparently what happened was that, this is going way back now. But in June 2010, I had 3 years on the job, and Dean Politopoulos, the department's propaganda minister, I should say the third floor's propaganda minister. What do they call him? The public relations officer. You
Yeah,
know who he
public
is,
relations. Yeah.
right?
I've
Yeah,
met
he
him.
was
Yeah.
on. He was on TV. You posted
He was,
something with him the
yeah,
other
he
day
was at a
talking
meeting not
to.
too long ago.
Yeah, right. And
Right. Speaking of against bail reform.
so Dean was one of these guys who thought that he was a salty old. Everyone knew this about him. He was. I got along with him after I left the third precinct. We didn't get along too well while I was there because he was one of these guys who had 2.5 years on the job and walked around like he had been there for 40. You know what I mean?
Seemed like a
Like,
good guy when I've spoken to him.
yeah, I mean, he generally is, I think. I didn't think he was too good of a guy back then. I got no problem with him now. But he was definitely one of these guys who, if he had 3 years on the job and you had 6 months, you were like the gum on the bottom of his shoe, and it was hilarious.
Right.
So I guess he was trying to get in with the in crowd back then. So he speaks up at that meeting and basically accuses Ray of not really disagreeing with any of the Keith's policies. You just got a personal beef with the guy.
Mm.
And Ray says, no, this is about policies. The guy, Ray was trying to, even back then, was trying to, make it clear to the membership that Keith was beginning to sell them out. He's too cozy with management. He's too cozy with City Hall. He should be fighting these things, and he's not doing it. And in the meantime, he's pushing for all of his friends to get special gigs. He's pushing for John Mueller to become the police commissioner. So he's making concessions that affect us as a membership so that he can hook up his pals and himself. You know what I mean?
So the city basically was wanting to cut these different units, right? Just I guess to save money. Or they did cut up to save money and stuff and then Keith was not fighting it. He was whatever, as long as he got, like you said, these concessions, given to him. One of them was. I
still don't think they're back, to be honest with you. I don't think they're back.
No, I don't think. No, I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to, but I know there's still units that were cut that people are still to this day asking to be brought back. Okay.
So let me see this because I do have some notes here, so I want to make sure that I.
That's very important, though, and I think that Montero was doing the right thing by fighting for that, and it's true. I mean, with the police, PAL, and with the youth and stuff. Domestic violence, that's huge.
So did the court. They thought he was doing the right thing too, apparently. But you can, if you want to. Now, here's where Mueller comes in.
Oh wait, hold on. We got a comment here. I think you might want to read. Anthony, you are making all this up. This conversation at a meeting never happened. That's Keith Olson, the president of the Yonkers PBA.
Right. Well, Keith, obviously, this is stuff that I got from Ray. I wasn't even at a lot of those meetings. I was at some of them. I'm not making it up. It's stuff that I heard secondhand. So, I mean, it shouldn't be hard to figure out who the source is.
Montero never said a word at any of the meetings, not a peep.
Not true, Keith. I remember being at a meeting where the two of you were standing at the front of the room, and he called you one of the biggest graffiti artists around, and you said bullshit, Ray. I remember. I was at some of them.
It was there. It never happened.
Well, so was I, and so was V. So go ask her. Because we used to go together to the meetings once in a while. So I mean, I guess Keith must have heard that we were going to go over the Ray Montero stuff tonight. So I guess he decided to tune in and interject.
Well,
I'm sure he'll keep doing
it's
that.
good to hear from Keith. I mean, again, I definitely, and I think the people also who may be watching would like to hear both sides. I think it's always fair to do so. But according to what you're saying, you've spoke with Montero, you've gone over this. So, what you're saying that, about Montero is from his own mouth, right? It's from Montero, according to what you're saying.
I think I was pretty clear that I got all of this from Ray,
I don't have to ask. I know what happened. So he's basically saying he doesn't have to ask. He was there.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, what do you want me to say? I figured that Keith would be quick to.
He says that nobody was more vocal about the cuts than I was. Google it.
I think he's campaigning now a little bit. I don't think anybody's going to run against you, Keith.
Ray is lying, period.
Okay, well, maybe so. There's two sides to every story. I figured Keith would get out there and, write an email or something about the crazy 14B lieutenant who's talking all this crap on the podcast. I figured it would come tomorrow, but he's decided to hop in right now, which is good. More people should do that under their real names.
And he says the lawsuit was dismissed.
No, that's not my understanding. Well, I don't know. I mean, look.
What does that mean? What lawsuit? Not the Ray Montero.
All I can go with is, what we're reading on the website and what I'm told by Ray himself. Keith. I'm more interested in Mueller's aspect of it because that ties into my case, which I'm sure you're aware of, even though I know you won't admit it.
Ray ran against me. I beat him with more than 75% of the vote.
That's true. Yeah, I know that.
And so, but what does he mean by the lawsuit was dismissed? Not the Ray Montero lawsuit. He said, because he writes that again, the lawsuit was dismissed, and that's a fact.
Well, here's what Ray says. Ray says he won the lawsuit, but he didn't get any. He wasn't awarded any money or anything like that. Basically, everybody got off the hook, but he was awarded the decision.
Right, and it says that here. I mean, it says that they overturned it here.
Right.
And I guess that is showed here on the.
He was reinstated into the union after they kicked him out.
Yes, the Montero lawsuit was dismissed.
Okay.
And so, but
right. Well,
he did get back on
that. I certainly don't trust Keith's word. Ray says differently. The website seems to say differently.
Right. And so, again, see what it says here, I guess. I mean, I don't know if you have anything else specifically for Keith also. I mean, you guys.
And a couple of attorneys told me that this case is used every day. I mean, I don't know. Apparently, across the country, this case is used because it went straight to the heart of is something like union speech protected by the First Amendment.
Right.
You're kind of working in your capacity as a cop, but not exactly, because it's a democratic institution.
But ultimately, the lawsuit here was not dismissed or was dismissed, and he it was not dismissed, but he didn't receive any kind of financial settlement, or was it dismissed? Because I'm not seeing here. I mean, or was there like something else? Was there another appeal after this? I mean, I'm not an attorney.
There was a federal case regarding the First Amendment. That's what we're going through now. There was also a state case where he was trying to get back into the union, and I don't know. What are your comments on that, Keith? Because he also said he won that one.
And that was the state case to get back into the union?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I do remember him telling me some things about that. And I was going to mention him, I guess, towards the end of the podcast. But Keith went around, and I remember Billy Pataki coming up to me with asking for my signature, because Keith was sending his buddies in the PBA, his trustees, going around trying to get signatures, because according to the bylaw, you got to get X amount of signatures to dispel a member from the union. And I remember Billy Pataki coming up to me in the 3rd Precinct parking lot, telling me all these stories about Ray and manipulation of overtime slips and things like that. And this guy's a bad apple. You got to sign. We got to get him out. I said, Billy, I'm not signing to kick another member out of the union just because Keith Olsen doesn't like him. What am I, an idiot? I mean, I know what's going on here. Everyone knows. It's not Keith Olsen's union, is what I said to him. It's not. I don't care that he doesn't like the guy. You can't kick a guy out of the union just because he ran against the president who doesn't like it, Is that Keith Olsen? Is that why he was being kicked out of the union? Because he was running against Keith Olsen for president? Is that the reason, or was there something else or another reason why, they wanted Montero out of the union? What reason did they give? He's gonna, right. So, he's probably going to go into some of the stuff that, it's the behavior. Here's the thing: whether or not what the outcome of the case was is not really all that important to me. I'm told that he won. There are references to it on the web, internet, and Keith is obviously going to say something differently. He's still the PBA president, so of course he doesn't want us just doing this podcast without him trying to run a little interference. So, obviously, I think Keith knows that what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to do, is to show how John Mueller behaved in this situation, because it strikes directly at the heart of how he behaved in my situation. So, what they did, how they retaliated against him, and I remember seeing him on the desk down at the DD. So they can't tell me that he wasn't transferred out of SIU. And that's where we're about to get to that just now when Keith's first comment popped up. You were about to read Montero alleges that shortly after that meeting.
Right. And so you're saying that basically that Keith Olsen is lying. Is that what you're saying? Because we're gonna read through this, and the fact that he's saying that it's been dismissed.
What I'm saying is that I wasn't there. Okay, I wasn't.
Ray was the only person in the history of the PBA to be kicked out of the union. The union asked for this after he attacked a member in a meeting.
You're getting ahead of me, Keith. We're going to get to all that.
Now the outcome doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter for my purposes because
I knew that comment, because I would think that I would say the same thing. I think that the outcome, I think, should matter. But I get what you're saying. What's in there, I guess is what you're looking at, right? In terms of what is being said about Mueller or how it's characterizing Mueller,
right.
The individual. Okay.
Right.
He goes, I don't mind the podcast at all. I just want you to tell the truth.
No, and I appreciate you commenting under your real name. Well, what I'm saying
Facts, lies matter. Yeah, I definitely respect that.
What I'm trying to pull out of this is Mueller behaved a certain way, and the courts basically said, okay, no more of this, you idiot, qualified immunity, and dismissed his role in the case. That's, to me, that's important because that's important for my story. What happened with Ray Montero and Keith Olson, it's not all that consequential to me. The rumors that were going around at the time was that Ray won his case. He got back into the union. Apparently he won this case about the First Amendment and union speech being protected by it, which it was kind of like unprecedented at the time. That's my understanding of it. So the ultimate disposition of the case, Ray told me he didn't win anything. He didn't win any money or anything like that. No one really got punished for anything. So they can go back and forth all day as to whether it was dismissed or whether it was affirmed. And, I don't even know where to look for that at the end of the day. I don't know.
Well, let me read this
as
right
I
here.
said, I'm talking about it from the perspective of the details that I was given at the time that I reached out to Ray to get information about how these people act, because I knew they were coming after me now.
Right.
So, of course, everything that I got from Ray. Right. And from the attorney who I used against the city who represented Ray. He was one of the attorneys that represented him. So everything I'm getting from Ray's attorney and from him. You know what I mean? So.
Right. And I mean, it would say here on here too also, right? I mean, it tells you the result. Well, let me read here because it says something about Mueller. Where was I? Right. Where did I leave off?
Montero alleges that shortly after that meeting.
After that meeting, Montero alleges that shortly thereafter, Mueller, right, that went then a lieutenant, and at the time of the filing of the complaint, the acting police chief of the YPD pulled him into his office and told Montero to stop criticizing the YPD and the police commissioner Hartnett, or Montero will be transferred to another division. Despite Mueller's warning at a Yonkers PBA meeting in February of 2011, Montero called for a non-confidence vote or no confidence vote with respect to Hartnett. Right. And so, I guess, some of the things that you're saying, I guess, and how you're trying to, I guess, show people and make the point is that these things happen, right? Like he's being pulled into the office and told not to criticize YPD, right? Don't criticize the commissioner, right? Otherwise, you'll be transferred out of this unit. So these are the things that happen. Just, because and I'm hearing what I like to be fair. So I'm hearing what Keith Olson's saying, and I'm hearing what you're saying. Right. And now I want to make sure that
is Keith going to deny that? I mean, it's the behavior involved that I'm more interested in.
Right. Then that's what I'm saying. So then that's why I wanted to point that out and make, when I stopped there. The alleged retaliation against Montero, based on his comments at the June 10th and February 2011 union meetings, Montero alleges that Olson, acting with Olson's close associates Mueller and Detective Sergeant Moran, engaged in a campaign of retaliation against him. The district court discussed Olson, Moran, and Mueller's action in some detail. And then it states Montero versus City. We rehearse those allegations, or rehearse allegations only insofar as we think them relevant to this appeal. In March 2011, a month after Montero's call for a no confidence vote with respect to the police commissioner Hartnett, Montero alleges Olson, Mueller, and Moran conducted an unauthorized investigation focused on Montero's use of overtime slips. Because of this investigation, Montero asserts that the YPD wrongly denied him 40 hours of compensatory pay and issued a disciplinary write-up of him. The next month, Montero alleges he was transferred from the Special Investigations Unit, which Montero describes as highly desirable, to the less desirable Detectives Division. while in the detective division, Montero apparently assigned to desk duty and became ineligible for overtime pay. So, really quick, I want to stop this. So because he was, and maybe Keith could say that, because he was running against you or wanted to run, to become the president or whatever of the YPBA.
Why don't you just let him send you a link and hop in? I'm sure you have a webcam.
Oh yeah, I mean, I will listen, Keith. We could definitely do that if he's up for it. But if he's not, I just want to know, why did they investigate him, into his overtime? Was that retaliation? I mean, for wanting to run?
They needed a reason. They can't just say we're kicking you out of SIU because
Right.
you're opposing us politically. They need some misconduct on his part. You know what I mean?
Right. And even if it was a legitimate thing, right? Maybe, he was lying about the overtime or whatever. Why all of a sudden investigating at this? No, I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm just saying, but then why investigate it now, right? As opposed to having investigated it before. So was that out of retaliation, right?
It was definitely political. He happened to be working in the unit where Keith's buddies worked. Keith's good buddy was the.
He said, I couldn't have cared less that he ran against me.
Come on, Keith.
Montero gave Hartnett cookies for Christmas.
He's just running interference.
No, definitely. But so then why did what sparked the investigation into the overtime? If it wasn't, out of retaliation, right? So let me move on. While in the detective unit division, Montero was apparently assigned to desk duty and became ineligible for overtime pay. According to Montero, a month later, Olson admitted to him that this transfer was directed by Moran at Mueller's instruction and was affected because of Montero's criticism of Olson's leadership of the Yonkers PBA at the June 2010 union meeting, and Hartnett's leadership of the YPD at the June 2010 and February 2011 union meetings. Is that correct? Did Olson, did you admit that to Montero? I'm sure you're going to say no, Keith.
Well, I tend to believe it because Keith is like that. He likes to flaunt his power. And he is a powerful guy within the department. There's no doubt about it. A lot of people say he runs the department.
I thought that was one of the Spanos, John Spano.
Well, when they say that he runs it, what they really mean is that he gets everything he wants because he's in bed with the Spanos. I mean, again, I haven't been a PBA member since 2013. I got promoted in January 2014 to sergeant. So,
well, maybe I got a question for Keith. What is it exactly that Empire Strategic Planning does for the Yonkers, the YPA? I'm sorry, the YP. What is it?
I'm sure he's got an answer.
The Yonkers Benevolent Association. The
well rehearsed.
Right? What does Empire? Because I know that the unions pay Empire Strategic Planning, for consulting, for lobbying services. What lobbying are they doing for the PBA, for the Yonkers PBA? I'm interested in that. I'm just curious because I know there's a lot of money goes to Empire. That's Nick Spano's company. If you just in case you weren't aware.
That's his 703 account because I got that from the Bernie Madoff docuseries on Netflix. Bernie Madoff had an account with J.P. Morgan Chase where he was keeping all the Ponzi scheme money, and it ended in the number 703. So they called it the 703 account.
Yeah,
big scam. That's So ESP, I like to call it.
Well, so the
703 account,
the Yonkers PBA, the CLSA, and other unions, I'm sure here in Yonkers, pay Empire Strategic Planning for lobbying. What are they doing? Is it worth the money being paid to Nick Spano, the mayor's brother? That I want to know. Definitely, I would like to know that. And in September 2011, Montero alleges Mueller conducted a second unauthorized investigation of Montero, this time for insubordination. That same month, Olson, after learning that Montero was planning to run against him for the Yonkers PBA presidency, allegedly confronted Montero, calling him a effing P and threatening to kick his ass for refusing to debate him. You
did that, Keith. I mean, I'm not saying I was there or anything. I'm just saying.
So sad, brothers against brothers. That is sad. That is, and for the Yonkers Police Department, you notice, Anthony, the people of the city love you guys. I mean, they love you guys. They have so much respect for the police department, the men and women that wear that uniform. I mean, you guys get a lot of respect from us here. We love you guys. And it's like, you can't go against the police department, man. Or you're that's it. Nobody's gonna like you, right? And I support them, because of course you guys, play an important role in the city and keeping us safe and stuff. And so, they don't like to see this stuff. They really don't like to see the stuff between the people in the department. Seeing a lieutenant like Anthony DiMaggio with really an impeccable record up until you had that personal issue, right? And then now you're off the force, his pension taken away. Keith, like, he got kids, and his pension, and it sucks. And this is what, is happening here. So it's disheartening to the people of the city of Yonkers to see this and know that this is happening. And how can we, get to a better place? It is sad, right? Yeah, it is sad. And so how do we get to a better place? And do you think maybe that there's individuals, and I'm not talking about you, Keith, but other individuals that are in the city that maybe need to go so we can have this better, you know what I mean? Unity and cohesiveness among us, all of us, because I think there's a lot of division in Yonkers because of just a certain group of individuals, Keith. And I'm not saying you, you know what I'm saying, Keith. I think everybody knows what I'm saying, right? And it's time to vote this year. We got to vote that out. And anyway, Montero asserts that his office was vandalized. Oh, shortly thereafter, with pictures of the Cowardly Lion posted throughout it. Really, from The Wizard of Oz, one of my favorite movies. Although Montero alleges that he reported Olson's threats and the vandalism of his office to the YPD Internal Affairs Department, aka the Black Shirts, the department apparently took no action in response to these reports. And there are reports, I'm sure maybe you can get the copies of those. In January 2012, Montero further alleges Olson, Mueller, and Moran conducted a third unauthorized investigation of Montero, this time seeking to prove that Montero had been outside of his home while on sick leave. Although Montero contends that he had permission to leave his residence during this period, the YPD nevertheless docked him 2 days' salary.
Let me tell you what I know about that, or at least what I was told about that. So when he decided to run against Keith for the presidency, I guess, I don't know, the way he described it to me was just bad timing. He got strep throat or something like that, and he called out sick from work. But because there was only a day or so or whatever left to campaign before the election, he must have called up to medical control. He told me he got permission from them to leave the house. He was on sick leave, but he didn't tell them that he was going to campaign. He didn't give them a reason. I don't know. This is what he told me. So he goes to wherever they were campaigning. Keith Olson was there. He said it was some building down in I Park, down by where right across from where Lionsgate is now. And Keith Olson was there campaigning, and so he went down there to campaign. There was a bunch of PBA members there for whatever reason. I don't really know. I was so engrossed in these stories that I really wasn't asking Ray for tons of details. I just let him talk, and I have a pretty good memory, so I remember. And when he was there, apparently Keith must have called or texted Brian Moran and told him he's here. He's supposed to be out sick, and that was another reason to launch an investigation into
right.
He was using the sick leave, and another way to come up with something that turned into a write-up on paper to be used against him.
Well, but I mean, technically he's supposed to be home, right? Not at that right campaigning.
He said he got permission from the medical control unit, which is how you're supposed to do it.
Right. Well, I guess if you could, he has, because technically you're not supposed to. So, if I would say if he went without getting permission, that was,
There's rules about that. It's during your tour of duty and things like that. So in other words, if you work 4 to 12 and you're out sick, then, you can go to the theme park during the day if you want, as long as you're out sick. Then again, I was never a guy who went out sick a lot, so I don't know.
Yeah, should have been out sick that one day. The YPD is in great shape. There will always be a small handful of disgruntled people. The YPD is and always will be the best police department in the nation, hands down. And I don't disagree with you there, Keith.
Neither do I.
I'll say that we love the YPD, best police force. Thank you, guys. God bless you always. Ray would have never showed up knowing I'd be there. Sunlight is always the best disinfectant. Is it to use one of your sayings? Healthy is enough to campaign, but too sick to work. Well, if he got permission, which is weird because I'm just saying, like, I know me as a owner of a bit, I have employees, right? I mean, my employer says, "Hey, I'm out sick, but hey, can I go get permission to go?" I'll be like, "What do you mean? You're supposed to be at work then if you're gonna, you know." So
Well, here's the
just
bottom line. The bottom line is that the investigation that was launched into it, the investigation, you know, listen, I guarantee you Keith's been out a lot of times, was probably supposed to be working and was at a Yankee game.
right.
You know, what about like, being on duty and, say being 2 towns up in a police unmarked car and getting shit faced at the jewelry store? I mean, how about
But
that?
I was gonna say that I'm sure that other people have done that and get away with it, and that but when you're no longer, in anymore, anything you do is gonna get now, written up. You're gonna get whatever.
The investigation that Brian Moran and John Mueller launched into this, his alleged misuse of sick leave.
You can't get permission to campaign while you're out sick, and that's what I'm saying. Like that sounded a little strange that you would get permission to go campaign when you're supposed to be out
he
sick.
Told me that he didn't get permission to campaign. He just got permission to leave the house. I don't know what was said.
See, but
that's what he said to me.
Yeah.
That's what he said to me. I don't know.
And it could have been a setup. Yeah, you could get permission to leave the house. We know where he's going.
Maybe I know the detective captain at the time, the captain in charge of the detective division, the commanding officer, I'm saying, didn't authorize any of these investigations and later called Brian Moran out for that. Then Keith Olsen and the goons went after him. They went after his use of overtime slips, ripping through his office. I'm sure Keith will deny that too, but that was pretty well known at the time.
Your father was my boss for years. I've never been written up for anything.
Yeah, because my father was your boss. And I'm sure he'll sit there and talk tons of shit about my father, but my father was a good guy. He was old school,
All right. He didn't do it that way, right? Just maybe talk to you. In August 2012, Montero alleges Olsen told Montero's commanding officer, Detective Sergeant Michael Kevel, among other things, that Montero better be effing careful. These remarks apparently followed Montero's refusal to acknowledge Olsen and Moran's presence while visiting a fellow officer receiving medical treatment in a hospital. Although Montero states that Kevel reported Olsen's comments to Internal Affairs, the department apparently once again undertook no investigation. On October 2013, Montero, you want to say something there?
Just that, is that really a surprise? The black shirts do what they're told. We went over that. We spent the whole podcast on that earlier on. I think it was the sixth one we did. They're a political unit. If you think that you just go down there and hand them something to investigate and they just start investigating, that's not the way it works. Right. They got to get permission from the third floor first. And the third floor will put the kibosh on it if putting the kibosh on it serves their political purposes.
So, and I don't know. I guess you probably won't know this. You don't have the documentation, and you can only go off what Montero's saying. But are you sure there was no investigation done on this? And or
am I sure? No.
Right.
But would I bet my money on it? Yeah, because I know how the department works. I should say I know how internal affairs works. I know because look at everything I went.
And there should be, right? There should be an investigation with if an officer reports something like that to the internal affairs, right?
Justin Barbado wanted no part of what happened with me. None. You know what I mean? Don Monaco was like he was almost ready to cry sitting in the office during the interview. They're doing the bidding of two halfwits, Mueller and Venturino, two sadistic low-life halfwits, and the room is full of basically good guys, at the time I thought that included Charlie Walker. After I saw the internal affairs reports, I don't think so anymore. But the IAD is a political unit, not an investigatory unit. And that's all there is to it. He can deny it all he wants, but everybody on the inside knows it.
In October 2013, Montero asserts Olsen sent a text message to Montero telling him that he wanted Montero to meet him in another jurisdiction and preferably off duty, which the plaintiff understood to be a threat of violence. Also in September, Montero asserts Olsen compelled Internal Affairs to investigate Montero for his alleged communications with a reporter from the Yonkers Tribune. Following an online article criticizing Olsen's leadership of the Yonkers PBA. When Montero refused to tell Internal Affairs whether he was the source of the article, the YPD allegedly at Olsen's behest threatened Montero with termination. And so that's that lawsuit, right, that Hezi is in, and I guess he's still in it maybe, with Olsen and stuff. And, and I'm sure Olsen can't comment on this. But, Olsen, man, Keith Olsen, I think Hezi Jerris is behind this. Hezi's office is registered over there at Native Sage's building. Just
right.
So you might want to know. You guys should go to war with him.
Around the time of all of this is about when Spano won the election and became the mayor. And Keith can deny this, but I was at this meeting when he said it. He said, he was promised by the mayor that if he won, in exchange for the PBA endorsement, if he won, EH would be gone and we would get a Yonkers guy. Didn't promise him it was John Mueller. But the New York City guy will go and we'll make a police commissioner from within the ranks in Yonkers. And I was at that meeting, so we can't deny it.
So he said that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And when Spano won, he came in, and ultimately he went with Gardner instead of Mueller. We already went through the reasons why on a previous podcast. And Mike being Nick's little brother and Nick having a sweet tooth for the union cash, that's when they really took their clothes off and hopped into bed together. I mean, that's when it really became like, for him to, for Spano to later even pick Mueller, for him to even still be in contention after all of the nonsense, the constant complaints from captains and, the complaints going into human resources.
That's a link there. Maeve Scott says, is there a way forward to make the peace settle and move forward? Life is too short and the YPD is too good for all this negativity. There are good and bad leaders in every profession and everything is political these days, locally, regionally, and nationally. Must be a better path ahead. There is, Maeve Scott. There actually is. And that's if we come out and vote this year, specifically in the June primaries. And I'm going to say this again. It's what I was saying just a little bit ago, Maeve. It's the division that's caused by certain individuals at the very top that keep us like this as a city so that they can control and manipulate us easier, right? And so we have to be together, the people, the police, the fire department, DPW, and stand against some of our elected officials, right? Political leaders, who prefer us to be this way. And that's the problem. And while, you're right, the YPD is great and we love them, and there are a few bad apples in every profession. I agree with that. Every profession. What was done to Anthony DiMaggio, is not something that, I think for him, at least, he can just move forward and just go about his day because, a lot was taken away from him. 15 years as a police officer, a career, that you worked hard at, you did well at, and then all of a sudden you have an issue with someone. And because of this political stuff, right, you end up being fired, terminated without your pension. And how, you can't no longer support yourself, your family stuff. And then also stuff that happened with his daughter, which is even worse than the money, I would imagine. That just somehow that has to be rectified. That in order for this to move forward, I would imagine that, and I think Anthony, you would agree with me, right? That his situation needs to be rectified, in the proper way, and I think that that's what would do it, and assure that things like this do not happen because Anthony's not the only one that has been sent to the shrink, and others are going there currently attending the shrink. There'll be others that may be sent for one reason or another, right? And so that has to stop. Right, that's the issue.
Well, let me address what he brought up before. He brought up something about Ray hitting somebody at a union meeting. Now, I was not at that meeting, so that's Keith's version of the story. Naturally, I have Ray's, because I spoke to Ray at length about all this stuff. So at that meeting, apparently what happened was that was when the contracts were being negotiated. And the rumor was Keith was going to sell out and make all these concessions on the 207C law that the city wanted. And Ray was opposing it. So what Ray tells me is that at that meeting, he basically called out Andy Quinn and said, tell us what this is all about. Are you shifting the burden from the city to the member with this proposed change? What he says was Andy Quinn kind of, like he gave one of those kinds of answers. And Ray was like, yeah, okay, fine. And then tried to go to the bathroom. This is up at the Dunwoody golf course, banquet hall, whatever you want to call it. And at that point, Ray hears Keith yell, "Don't effing let him leave." And some of his goons go to block the door. Billy Pataki, who I'm pretty sure I said I always got along with and liked. And I do. Billy, I don't know why he was involved in this to the degree that he was. Billy goes to block the door. Frank McDonald, the big guy, right? The
Yeah.
guy who I said is the VP now. And he was in the video with the thing with Hector. Always liked him too, Frank. And but they were big supporters of Keith. You used to kiss his ass a lot. You can't deny that. And they go to block the door with some of his other goons. And the way I have it is that Billy Pataki, puts his hand up and like actually puts his hand on Ray to keep him from leaving. And Ray pastes him one, smacks him, punches him, whatever he did, and all hell breaks loose. Big fight breaks out. Right. So Keith, trying to get out in front of it, calls Chucky Garner, the commissioner, and gives him his version of the story. Ray started a fight, and this and that. And, I guess anticipating that Chucky was going to send Internal Affairs up to Dunwoody to get the video to investigate, Keith gets out in front of that too and sends his buddy John Donaghy, who works in the video retrieval unit, up to Dunwoody to pretend he's launching an authorized official department investigation and to take all the equipment that might have recorded the incident. And he does. So when Internal Affairs goes up to Dunwoody Golf Course a few days later or whatever, once a real official investigation is started, the girl up at Dunwoody says, well, no, someone came and got all that stuff already. Internal Affairs went to Donaghy's house and found it in his car. Okay. Again, I wasn't there.
Now, is this documented? Or were you told?
Donaghy was giving a...
Because he said that never happened, you lied, right?
Well, he's got to deny it. What's he going to do, admit it?
There were 100 people at that meeting.
I'm sure there were. I wasn't there.
The one thing we all need to do is check our sources of information, cops, bloggers, journalists, all of us. We all need to be careful with who we listen to and who we believe. Yeah, you're right about that. I definitely will agree with Keith Olsen. And you know what's crazy though, Keith? I was listening to Vinny Spano at one point.
Well,
that was one of my sources.
Keith is not really known for telling the truth, a hell of a lot. That said, I wasn't at the meeting, and what I'm telling you is obviously from Ray.
Right.
So.
And so to be fair to Keith Olsen, right? Because I try to be fair, right? As much to be fair to Keith Olsen, that's what Ray Montero said, but that's not what you know for a fact, right?
And also there were other people who were there who admit to having been involved in the scuffle. Keith's buddy Minnie, who they did the fisticuffs a couple of times in a couple of locations that are well known to a lot of the cops.
But can't you verify
Hector Cartagena, yeah.
Wouldn't there be something you can do to like foil or get documents to verify this stuff? And this is the thing, Keith. Also, I do have to say that it's hard to verify stuff in the city of Yonkers. They don't always answer your FOIA requests. If they do, they send you the wrong information. And so it's also difficult, to really verify stuff here in the city of Yonkers. Unless you're a Ruros, you get to foil everything, right?
They shred documents, they fabricate documents.
But I agree with that. We definitely need to do that. And, for the most part, I try to really do that, and I also rely on some reliable sources that have told me things in the past that were correct, and after a while but I get along with Keith, says Danny Sullivan.
That's funny, Danny.
No, not really hard to verify shit that never. It's really hard to verify shit that never happened.
Well, I mean, that's why, obviously when Keith decides to come onto a podcast and start denying things that are being said on it, the obvious question he has to ask himself is, well, can he prove any of this? Well, if the answer is no, then the obvious thing to do is to come onto the podcast and start denying it all. So how are we going to know? Especially if the video is gone.
Right.
Or if there ever even was video. There may never have even been video. I don't know if there was.
Right.
But obviously, I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm getting all of this from Ray. I got all this from Ray. So I'm not stating it as a fact. I'm stating it as something that I was told from the horse's mouth, the guy that was involved in the lawsuit.
Right. I was gonna say, but there's certain, I mean, I guess it would not could disappear, right? I mean, the fact that they went there to retrieve the video, but it was gone, and they were told by the person that works there that some other cops already had came in and retrieved it. That wouldn't be documented somewhere, and if it was, it probably would be shredded, like you said, right? Is that what I'm assuming?
Yeah, I mean, even if it exists.
Oh, I always welcome Danny. Everybody, for the most part, everybody's invited. It's just that, if they, people don't want to come. If you want to know the truth, you will find it. Obviously, you don't care about the truth, Anthony.
How do I find it?
And again, I'll
find it. I'll go after it if it's out there.
I allow people to come on and speak, what their truth is, and I give them the platform to do that. And I let the people decide. Anyone that you may be mentioning here can always have that opportunity as well, or send me documents or whatever showing that Anthony's a liar, and I'll present that right away. Believe it or not,
I'm not a liar. I'm sure.
I'm just saying.
I'm sure Keith is aware that I've been pretty clear about the idea that I don't think he had anything to do with my situation. I may be wrong. People who don't like him have told me, oh, come on, bro. He was involved one way or another.
I get along with Charlie Walker as well. To me, he is a good dude.
Yeah. Well,
and and Charlie Walker, I mean, I don't know him, but I know that he owned the barbershop in Getty Square there at one point, not anymore. Always seemed like a good, cool guy when he would come in there and get his hair cut there. Also, I don't have nothing bad to say about Charlie Walker, but what I don't want to do though is also not try to not give you your opportunity, right, Anthony? If you say that's what you're feeling, then I have to respect that and take that as well, because I don't know for certain. I don't everyone's experience with people is different, and so we have to just can't say, okay, because my experience with someone is great, that you're lying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
About your experience.
Charlie should have passed on the. He should have tried to pass on the assignment to be my, investigator down in Internal Affairs, because when he wrote up these reports, I get it. He had a tough task at hand because his job is to put a case together from very little or nothing.
And I mean, does Charlie have a choice? I mean, what kind of really?
Well,
I mean, everyone has a choice, right? We all have a choice always.
I was just going to say we all have choices.
We always have a choice, but but at the reality of the situation here in Yonkers and in life, sometimes we may not have that choice, right? You got bills to pay, you got kids to feed.
He wouldn't have
what I'm
gotten
saying?
fired. He might have fallen out of favor a little bit, but not really, because Charlie has them by the balls in other ways that maybe we'll talk about down the line.
Because sometimes I think maybe I'm just not, I'm an idiot, right? Maybe I should just play the game, right? Although I thought I was trying, right? But sometimes I don't, you can't just always just play the game. But maybe I'm like, maybe I should have.
Well,
but then, that's just me. I go against the grain.
Oh yeah, no, it's my favorite thing to do.
But don't just go against the grain just to go against the grain,
Wow. So
just like I don't like the other, just like I don't like the others can't hold me responsible for liking who I do.
My main motivation for
and Anthony's relying on a disgruntled source with an agenda. Always vet your sources.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Listen, my main goal for wanting to talk about this was John Mueller, like I've already said, and his role in it, and how it played into the decisions that he made when he realized that I had him caught with all of my evidence and everything. So let's get to that part, because it's very important. All right.
Yeah, what page? Where do I go for that?
That is not in here.
Okay.
Because this happened after Ray had already filed the lawsuit, or so he tells me, right?
So where does it say though? Where does it talk about John Mueller, right? And where does it say what you have been saying about Mueller, right? And
well, right in front of you, right there. Read that sentence.
In February 2014, Montero asserts Mueller urged Police Chief William Cave to remove Montero as the YPD's representative at county-wide intelligence meetings. After Cave agreed, Montero contends he lost an additional 24 hours of pay per month. Later that year, Montero alleges Olson started a petition about him containing false statements, after which Montero was formally expelled from the Yonkers PBA.
That's the petition that I was telling you about. Billy Pataki approached me with, and it took Keith months, but he eventually got 60 or so signatures, which I don't know, man, I guess was enough to kick Ray out of the union.
Anytime.
Yeah,
and I can actually bring in Keith now. I can send him a link if you like. Finally, in July 2014, Montero alleges his office was broken into and his shield stolen. Anthony, let me ask you a question. That just reminded me of something, not to go off track. But one time I was driving down Park Avenue. I believe I was driving. But I saw this car, and it was there, parked there on the side, which I thought was strange where it was just parked, windows open. And I noticed, I think it had a police badge in it. I just kept it moving. I was like, I don't know what this is about. Yeah, it was strange. I don't know if that was some kind of setup or what, but I just kept it moving. I don't know if you know.
Well, you can get in trouble for losing or misplacing or lending out, something like that. Anything. If your shield, they call it your shield, not your badge.
Right.
If it ends up missing or in somebody else's possession, you can get into trouble.
Yeah,
for that.
sure.
You can take a financial hit. You get docs pay because they don't want elements of a police uniform ending up in other people's hands. Now,
makes sense.
According to Ray, this was basically them going into his office and stealing it so that they could later say that somebody found it and brought it to them, and they could use that as an excuse to write him up.
Maybe that was his shield in that car that I saw that day.
Now, apparently what happened was Brian Moran came to him in the detective division where he was on the desk or whatever and said, here's your shield. Somebody found it, down the hall or in the parking lot or something and brought it to me.
Here's a good question. I think I like this, Danny. Here's a good question. Keith, if you were Anthony's union rep, what would you have done differently? And do you think he should have been fired? I hope Keith Olson is still on here. That's a great question, Danny. I like that one. Thank you. What would Keith Olson have done if he was your union rep? And does he believe that you should have been fired? Good question, Danny. Like that.
Yeah, Keith has fought for people sometimes. I can name names. I'm not going to. If I were a PBA member when this was going on,
right? If he were a PBA, or if
he would have done the same nothing that Mike Koch and Mike Hanley did. Because Mueller is his. What's the word I'm looking for? Is his birth child. Mueller's commissionership, if that's even a word. Mueller being the police commissioner is a product of all of Keith Olson's efforts. So, and it's his dear friend for many, many years. So he's certainly not going to help me come in and sabotage all of his own work, So it's you can ask him, should he have been fired? That's an interesting question. I'd like to see his answer to that. But yeah,
and he, right in Keith Olson, right? I don't know if he's still listening. I wish I would have thought of this sooner. I like that, Danny. What do you think of the union reps, performance when this whole Anthony situation went down, right? And how they handled it, being that you're a president of the PBA. It seemed like they didn't really do much for Anthony, and I'm just wondering, is Anthony lying about that? And I'm not saying that, maybe he is. I don't know. Again, I've only been speaking to Anthony, but
must have had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I would like to know, how would you have handled that different being a PBA president? What do you think of the way his union president handled it? Did they do right by him or what? What do you think in your experience as a PBA president? And
I don't think he's going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I think he just came on to run interference because he heard that we were going to talk about the Montero case.
Well, and again, I think that answering that question or, and kind of giving input on that shows a lot. It shows a lot because, it shows that, listen, I do care. I care about my job. I take it serious. And yeah, you know what? This is what I believe. And if Anthony was wrong, then, hey, this is why. And Anthony was wrong. And this is why this happened. If not, that union president didn't do the right thing, blah, blah, that would show a lot, leadership.
Refusing to answer the question shows a lot too.
That's what I'm saying, and would you have handled things differently? If so, what? That's a great question. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate that.
So, we'll see if he answers that. I don't think he will, but in the meantime,
well, yeah. What do you want to touch on real quick? We've been on an hour and 14 minutes. Wow.
Yeah. So let's get to the part where Ray goes to the doctor. Okay.
That's not this, right? That's something else.
No,
You
that's
got
not in there because it happened after he filed,
okay.
apparently. So
Did you send me something? Is there something I should bring up?
nope,
Or
nope. It's
okay,
just a quick little story. Something that I
all
remember
right.
the day that I got a phone call from Glenn Caserta saying that the clinic had canceled my appointment because they couldn't accommodate me or something like that. And I called Ray and he said, "Remember this? Remember the story I told you? This is the story." One day, when all this, all this drama is going on, Ray's when Chucky came in, he transferred Ray from the detective division, from the desk down there, back into the gang unit. Okay, and that's where his shield ended up missing. But while he was working in the gang unit, there was an incident or a search warrant done on a car, and the car was brought up to the garage up at the fourth precinct. That's where they'll bring all cars that they're going to do a search warrant on, whether they find something on a crime in progress or they go to a judge beforehand and say, "We got to search so and so's car." Then they go get it. They always bring it up to the garage and behind the fourth precinct, and they'll rip it apart right there. They'll toss it. That's what we say. It's police jargon. They'll do their search warrant. So Ray goes up there with the gang unit to do a search warrant. Now Mueller is the commanding officer of the fourth precinct at the time, because the other thing that Gardner did when he came in as police commissioner was he transferred the clown face creep out of SIU and up to the fourth precinct. The commanding officer of any unit gets to pick his executive lieutenant. So he picked his buddy Chiarella, who was Venturino's immediate supervisor many years later when all of this unfolded with me down to the detective division. But at the time, they're in the fourth precinct. Muller's the boss, the captain. Chiarella, another Olsenette. He's married to Keith's sister. Yeah. They're the two in charge up at the fourth precinct. And Ray is doing a search warrant behind the precinct in the garage where you do search warrants on cars. And another guy, an Olsenette, John Viviano Sr., now retired. And his son, who I like, is the VP of the CLSA at the moment. But at the time, John Viviano Sr. was on the job. And John likes to get him in, the beers. And I've gone out drinking with him. And he shows up apparently drunk, off duty. Okay, this is the story that I got. And he's pretty drunk and he's starting trouble with Ray. And he's going around inside the precinct, Montero's here, trying to get other cops to start trouble with Ray. It ends up getting physical. I don't remember who touched who first. It ends up getting physical. And Olsen and Tommy Felon, because Viviano was a sergeant at the time. So the CLSA had to get involved. The president was Tommy Felon at the time. So Olsen and Felon go directly to Spano, because by now it's 2016, 2017 or something. And Spano is the mayor, and he's got his talons fully into the unions, So they go to Spano. They didn't even go to the commissioner. They wanted something. They went to Spano. They wanted Boxer transferred or denied ESU. They went to Spano. They didn't go to Chucky for anything. They went to Spano, Chucky, and then Spano would come down on Chucky and tell them what he wanted done at the behest of Keith Olsen. So Olsen and Felon go to Spano and say, "Oh, Montero, he's out of his mind. He's putting his hands on people. He's causing all this trouble." Meanwhile, Spano knows that it's just a beef over the unions and over the lawsuit that he had recently filed. And so Spano tells Chucky, this guy's going to go for an evaluation. They get the lawyers involved from Corp Counsel. And the lawyers from Corp Counsel confront Ray down at the detective division one day and say, "You're going to go for these evaluations. We hear you've been causing trouble, So they send him to a shrink that works somewhere up in the area of St. John's Hospital at the time. I don't know if the guy is still there. Definitely was not the quackery clinic that they sent me to up in Hartsdale, and that they're still using against people. For some reason, Ray had to go for two separate appointments for one evaluation. I guess that's what happens when you go for a real evaluation. Instead of just going to talk to some quack who owes the state $75,000 in taxes, and you're going to have a 25-minute conversation with him like I did, and then he's going to write a report that destroys your career. But when it's a real evaluation, I guess you have to go twice. Ray went twice. And in between the visits, right, Ray comes back for the second visit. And he goes in and he's talking to the doctor. And the doctor says, "Who's this chief that called me in between the visits?" And Ray says, "What are you talking about?" "Well, some guy called and identified himself as a chief in the Yonkers Police Department, but wouldn't give me his name." Ray knows who he's talking about. He's talking about the clown face creep, who was a chief at the time. There was 3 chiefs. There's 3 chiefs in the Yonkers Police Department. There's only one who's crazy enough to do something like that.
Right.
He's not supposed to be doing that. He's not the police commissioner. He's not corp counsel. He's not the mayor. He's nobody. He's just a chief. And one who at least on paper is not supposed to have any stake in what's going on with Ray Montero. But because it's political, because it's workplace retaliation, he has a stake in it. He wants to see Montero crushed and possibly leveraged into signing a non-disclosure agreement. Who knows? So Mueller calls up this doctor before Ray goes in for the second appointment and is trying to tell him, now this is like 2016 or something like that. And Mueller's trying to tell this doctor about some incident where he got handsy with somebody back in 1997. And the doctor basically tells him, well, what does it have to do with why he's coming here to see me now? And Mueller starts to clam up and eventually ends up hanging up on the doctor. Never identifies himself as Mueller. So to this day, there's no proof that was him. But who is it going to be? There's only 2 other chiefs. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when Ray told me that story, that stuck in my head. Now, the day I get a call from Glenn Caserta saying, oh, the clinic called and they canceled the appointment. Why? They said they couldn't accommodate you today or something like that. The first thought that went through my head was, that's weird, because I don't know a doctor. I've been to a lot of doctor's appointments in my life. I've never had a doctor call me to cancel an appointment because they couldn't accommodate me. Right? If
What do you mean they can accommodate you, and what do you mean by that?
Well, it was a nonsense excuse. The clinic didn't cancel. That was Glenn trying to come up with a nonsense excuse as to why they did. He was lying to me. But it was a red flag because he didn't bother to come up with a good reason, a good solid sounding reason that just made me accept it and just move on with my day. It sounded like bullshit, because what doctor's office calls you to tell you that they can't accommodate you? If they're running 3 hours behind, well, you'll just wait in the waiting room for 3 hours.
I mean, I've had that happen actually.
It never happened to me, so it was very weird.
Yeah.
So the second thing was, now I'm remembering this story. So I call Ray and I tell him what's going on. He goes, no. That's Mueller. Mueller's doing something. And I said, I think you're right. Because he says, remember the story that I told you. The guy tries to pile on. So he must have some plan or something, or he's switching something up. Something's going on because Mueller is fudging with that appointment. That's what prompted me to call the clinic and record the conversation.
Right.
And then she told me what she told me, the receptionist. She gave me the time the department canceled. She told me it was the department. She gave me the time to the minute.
But yeah, so you mentioned that before, though. You mentioned that, he had they called up to cancel your appointment, right? And then they try to make it seem like it was the doctor that called, right? But then you call up and it was someone from the department that called up, right? And so they did the same thing to Montero, is what you're saying.
Something similar. They tried to sway the outcome of the evaluation. Okay, now
how do they sway by canceling the appointment? Well, at least in Montero, like how do they?
Well, you're forgetting why they canceled it. Because an hour earlier.
Well, I know in your case, I know why, right? Because they wanted to set their story up, it didn't work out right, so he had to cancel it, to get the story. But in Montero's,
I had gone to her house earlier that morning, so now she had this spontaneous interaction with me that she could twist the facts around, about the interaction and use it to go to family court and say, look.
Right. No, I understand.
Okay, right.
I understand why he did it. I'm saying with Montero, why was it that they did it with Montero? He said that they did the same thing with him.
No, what was that? They didn't cancel the doctor's appointment.
But they were playing around with you, saying they did something there to it.
Because Mueller wants him to fail the evaluation.
Right.
So what he's trying to do is he's trying to scare the doctor out of passing him and sending him back to work. But what Mueller didn't realize is that when Ray walked in, Ray was going to walk in and basically tell the doctor, this is political. This is all nonsense. I was the union VP. I ran against the president, him and his goons, started this campaign of retaliation against me, and it's still going on. This is part of it. That was Ray. Ray was just going to go and tell him the truth. Now, when Mueller made that phone call, he had already planted that seed in the doctor's head. Why would a chief call me and not leave his name if he was allowed to be doing that? You know what I mean? If it was okay for the chief to call me, give me this information, why wouldn't he give me his name? He's probably not supposed to be doing that, which makes it sound political.
But I guess what I'm asking is that what was the goal of it though for Montero? Like, what was the goal in doing
Mueller,
it?
you mean?
I mean, for Mueller, yeah, but I mean, in his case, Montero's case, I mean, what was the goal?
What was the goal for Mueller?
No, just and them doing that. Yeah, Mueller doing that. What was, because Montero's telling you that's the same thing that with me, that know that Mueller's doing something. What was his goal with Montero?
His goal was to try to make Montero fail the evaluation. So that
No, right, we know that,
but in a courtroom, I guess, because the lawsuit had apparently had already been filed.
Right.
Right.
But I'm saying, but how is he, how, in what way is he trying to make him fail it, right? What's the tactic that he's using, a strategy there?
Because, right, so being found unfit for duty is extremely, extremely serious. So it's such a reputation destroying thing that, in my opinion, what they were probably thinking was that if they had gotten the ruling from the doctor in their favor, it would tend to validate all of the other nonsense that they had fabricated against them already.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
right.
a character assault.
Right.
So
right.
So when he's filing a lawsuit and he's going in and, he's a good looking guy, looks nice in his suit and he speaks well, when he wants to. And so he's going to come in across as very credible in the courtroom.
Right.
But when you go in with a failing psychological report, it's very easy to convince the judge that, you're a lunatic and, you're not even supposed to be a cop. So so he really is fudging overtime slips and he really is stealing sick time and, using it the wrong way. The guy's a dirtbag. Right. Once you get a failing psychological report, it's much easier to sell anything you want to about a person. And,
right.
my reputation's been, yeah.
You got to create a narrative, a perception about a person, right? That will make other people believe that what you're saying about that person is true because look who he is. Look at the kind of person he is. I came on to address things you were saying about me, Anthony, and the fact that you're droning on about a lawsuit that was dismissed.
Well, also all lawsuits are inevitably dismissed.
Anthony knows that I cannot comment on the active personnel cases, and I guess that's talking about your situation and how he would have handled it if he were.
It's not active. What's active about it?
Dude, you're not even close to telling the truth. Well, I guess in asking how he would have, did he, what does he feel or what's his opinion in how, your union rep president handled it in your case, being that he's a union president, PBA president, did he have an opinion on how it was handled? But, I don't know if.
No, he can't answer because he's dead to rights. They're all dead to rights, his whole crew. My situation. He doesn't want to debate me on the merits of my case because he's going to get destroyed.
Yeah, I can understand that. I don't know if Keith would want to open say anything, open your mouth to say anything about that because, even if he wanted to say the truth and he didn't do enough or he didn't do his job, he can't say that. Right. And that's what I mean. That's a decision that some people have to make for reasons, protect yourself. Right.
I'm not sure.
So what's the truth, Danny? What's the truth? Danny says, what's the truth? He's talking to Olsen, actually.
Obviously, I'm sure that if Ray isn't watching right now, then he'll catch this podcast at some point, and I'm sure he and I will talk in the coming week. So, he told me he won the case. The lawyer who represented him told me he won the case, and the website certainly seemed to say that he won the case. It was overturned in the appellate division, so I don't know what Keith's talking about.
So the decision that conclusion, for the foregoing reasons, we affirm the district court's dismissal of the plaintiff's First Amendment retaliation claim against defendants Moran, Mueller, and the city of Yonkers. Vacate the district court's dismissal of the plaintiff's First Amendment retaliation claim against Keith Olsen and remand for further proceedings.
Okay, so now is that the further proceedings part where I'm told Ray prevailed?
That's what I'm saying. So do we have copies of that? That's what I was just going to say.
That may be somewhere in there. There may be somewhere at the end of the.
No, that was it there. That's at the end there. So they basically saying that they overturned the decision to have it dismissed and and allow it to move forward, but it didn't say whether or not there was what was the actual decision when they moved forward. Is there anything you didn't have anything on that? Montero punched an on-duty uniform sergeant in the face long after he lost the PBA president election.
That's the Viviano situation.
They did not prevail. The lawsuit against me was also dismissed.
Okay, well, that's not what I'm told, so I don't know. I'll talk to Ray this week.
Yeah, maybe
Well,
speak to Ray, straighten that out. And so, how did he end up getting his job back, though? Right, he did get the job back.
He never lost his job. He lost his, he was kicked out of the union.
Oh, he was kicked out of the union. How did he get back into the union?
He went to, what was it? He filed an Article 78. He went to an Article 78 proceeding where his claim, his lawsuit, or whatever you want to call it, his action was dismissed by a judge named Neary, whose father actually was, I think, a Yonkers detective way back in the day. And then he appealed that. It went to the Second Circuit, where I think the Hezzy case is now.
Mm-hmm.
From what Ray tells me, 5 Brooklyn judges, a panel of 5 Brooklyn judges, overturned Neary's decision and reinstated Ray back into the union, saying that what Keith Olsen did was arbitrary and capricious. Am I lying about that, Keith?
All right, so
he's repeating himself. You're lying, you're lying, you're lying, you're lying. That's what propagandists do. Keith, anytime you want to come on and have a discussion about any of this.
So this is August 2017. Let's see what's the end here. I want to know what was the conclusion. No, that's the one I just read.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's 48 or so pages long, that website. And again, Keith can say that and Ray can say it ended a different way. It was the behavior that was important, and they didn't deny it. They didn't deny the behavior. They went and said, yeah, okay, but it's not a First Amendment violation. That was their defense. It wasn't, we didn't do any of this. The fact that they do it is what I'm concerned about, with Mueller in particular.
So so what you're basically saying is that, the result of Montero's lawsuit against Keith Olsen, is not necessarily the reason for you mentioning this to begin with, right? But to show the behavior, right, and to show the character, I guess, of the individuals that you're speaking of, right, and the actions that they have, committed against other officers that are similar to yours. And so this is not just something that you're just saying because you have a vendetta or you're disgruntled or you've been fired.
Let me
what does Keith Olsen think about you being fired? I mean, maybe you can say that. Just what do you think about Anthony having been fired and losing his pension? Was it deserved? Did he deserve that? I mean, do you think it was fair what happened to him or not? I mean, you know his father. You worked, underneath his father. He was supervising, commanding officer, and I hear that a lot of people, police officers specifically, have respect for Anthony's dad, right? Your dad, and so I mean, what do you guys have to say about that? And can you understand why Anthony may also be upset, and viewed as disgruntled, I guess? Right? I mean,
we'll give him a minute to answer that. I don't think he's gonna, but let me make it a little bit clearer.
Well, I know he answered. He said, "What I wish I can say is it didn't happen."
I wish it didn't happen. Right. Well, thanks.
I wish it didn't happen.
So
I'm on, Anthony. This is a discussion, and what you're saying isn't true.
So what I'm saying is, as you read, the court basically said, we dismiss the action with regard to Mueller and Moran. They get qualified immunity. So they got a slap on the hand and basically said, enough with them. We'll remand the part with Keith Olsen for further proceedings. I don't care about that. Ray told me he won. Ray's attorney told me he won. Whatever it says there, court cases are always inevitably dismissed.
But I mean, you can't just say I don't care because that's what Ray told me in his. I mean, we need to know the facts. You know what I'm saying?
That's fine, and that's fine. And I'm not, and I don't think Keith is telling.
And I think it's important for you because you want to also look credible, right? You don't want your credibility to be
absolutely. No, of course. But so Mueller was given the slap on the wrist and tossed to the side. That was important for me because that shows why he's freaking out when I bring an attorney to internal affairs.
But where did it talk about Mueller being like a sadist and stuff like that? I mean, where does it say that specifically?
He's taking part in an illegitimate workplace retaliation mission to advance the agenda of a group of friends of his, to help Keith Olsen hold on to power. What they ultimately were trying to do, to explain it the best way, what they were trying to do with Montero was they were trying to undermine the democratic process built into the union bylaws. And that's just, in the spirit of this country. Unions are democratic institutions. Electing union leadership is a democratic process. What they were trying to do is they were trying to not only discourage Ray from continuing with his, in his insisting on running against Keith, they were also trying to get a message to other people who might think about doing it in the future. And it worked, by the way. No one's run against Keith since Ray did 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Right. And I guess what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess what you're saying is, because again, I look at it in terms of politics. It's kind of what's happening here, right? You go against the administration, you speak out against them, you oppose them, and they come down on you hard, right? And they go above and beyond what's maybe even legal at times, but definitely ethical, all right, and moral to, shut you down and stop you from, doing what you're doing and opposing them and potentially, taking away whatever power they have. And so that's what you're saying, Happy. And that's your point. And what you're pointing out is just the workplace retaliation, as you say, when you, challenge the status quo, and you're trying to do it in the democratic way, right? In the right way, the way the process is supposed to be. But because of the way, the system here in Yonkers and I guess within, the department, as you saw it there in your case, that can happen. It's just all about waiting in line, right? Something that I've mentioned before. You have to wait in line. If it's not your turn and you try to, run anyway, right? They're going to come at you. And it's happened to people in politics, right? So that's what you're saying is the point that you're trying to make here by showing this, this lawsuit here.
Right. So from my purposes, Mueller was a main part, a main antagonist in an ongoing workplace retaliation mission that lasted years, the sole purpose of which was to eradicate or essentially nullify the right way of doing things and to maintain the status quo, the wrong way of doing things. And, fascists have little use for democracy. Mussolini himself said it's of no use. The masses can't govern themselves. They can't pick their own leaders. Everything's eventually going to get all effed up because they're dumb. And that's how people like John Mueller think. I'm the best guy, so no one else can get involved in the process. Keith Olsen has to be the union president because he's going to get me made the police commissioner, and I'm the best guy. So the hell with the right way of doing things. Now, my point is that Mike Spano took that guy and decided that he should be the police commissioner. The guy who thinks like that, who has no use for democracy, who's taking these measures against Ray Montero to basically award his friend a dictatorship in the PBA.
Right.
And scare other people away from participating.
Yeah, and that, and again, I like to kind of connect it to what's happening in politics because we have these elections coming up, and that's exactly what's happening with Mike Spano, right? They when you mention Mussolini and that he thinks that he's the only one that can really govern and lead, and everyone else is too stupid to do it. That's essentially what they're saying here, and why and especially Lakeisha Collins Bellamy, the city council president, she's essentially saying that when I looked, and she says this in the Yonkers Voice interview, when I looked at the names of potential, which everyone hasn't really come out, so you don't know who's going to really run. I looked at the names. She said no. She was scared by it. So she knew that we needed Mike Spano, and that's why she introduced the legislation all by herself because only Mike Spano can lead us, basically, right?
The Spano family is a racketeering organization. I don't care how many.
Danny, I have actually. That's what I was doing. I'm sorry not to cut you off, but Danny, I was actually doing that. I've been trying to find it, like the proceeding. But anyway, go ahead. You said the Spano family.
Yeah, I'm a little unfamiliar with the legal wording and some of the documents on the website too, because I'm not an attorney. But
the democratic process worked. We ran for the same office, and I won with more than 3/3 of the vote. And you did admit that he got 75% of the vote. But you still don't think that was fair.
That's because Ray persisted. Ray didn't cave to the intimidation tactics, and he ran anyway. He ran from the desk down to DD.
But he's saying that he still won. He ran and he got 3/3 of the vote, right? He got 75% of the vote. Also not true. Someone else did run against me a few years later, and I won with
Yeah.
well over 90% of the vote.
One of the sham elections. That's what they do. They arrange for someone, one of his buddies or something, to run against him, and to lose by a lot.
We need Olsen and Mueller's side of this story. There's always more than one side. That's right. There's three sides, Danny. Three sides. There's the two sides of the individuals and the truth, as they say. It's Second Circuit, extremely easy. No, that's what I've been looking up. They give me the same one. Everyone I found is the same one with the same conclusion there. I've looked at a bunch of them. So maybe, look, Olsen maybe can post it on their link if you haven't, so we can look and we can verify it. Someone else that has a copy of the proceeding, I guess what happened after this, after it
Keith,
went to.
Did Ray get transferred out of SIU or not? On Mueller's orders? Simple question.
Yeah, and why was he transferred out of SIU? But didn't he, there was a reason, right? He was his overtime thing or something, right?
Well, that's what they came up with, and if you think that was legitimate, let me tell you something. No shot.
Right. And just knowing, my own experience and knowing certain things. I mean, I can't just say, Anthony, you're wrong, and and that's why I say I would love to see, some of the evidence and, but I can't, you know how it works. People know how I go down here in Yonkers.
I'm excited by the fact that Keith Olsen is actually taking part in this, because
I respect Keith Olsen for that fact. Actually, I always have respect when people come on here and use their real name. Keith, I have a lot of respect for you, man. And and I don't ever want to be disrespectful to you or the Yonkers Police Department. That I do, and nothing against you either, Anthony. I respect you too as well. Like that's nothing that I'm taking sides, but I do appreciate when people come on if they do disagree. Right? They come on and they show their name and they show who they are, right? Instead of doing this anonymous stuff and talking a bunch of crap. I have respect for that,
Absolutely.
If you badmouth your boss behind his back all the time, there's a really good chance you're going to get moved. Yeah, I'm sure. That's true. Let's talk about Papas and DeVitos and others, since we all have. You should ask Keith Olsen about that, Danny. That's about those guys. But yeah, I mean, it's just good to hear it, though. It's good to talk about it. Listen, at the very least, what we're doing here is we're having, a therapy session, right? This is like a real therapy session. Everybody's getting it all out. We're talking about it because at the end of the day, we are one big family here in Yonkers, right? We should talk about it. We're having this therapy session, getting all out. And it's good for the people to hear this stuff, right? And, ultimately, people can make their own decisions. Hopefully, we can provide as much information and evidence as we are able to obtain. Other people can share stuff and we can get, some resolution here maybe where,
And I have a feeling that Keith coming on and, leaving comments under his real name and defending himself is going to draw other people out of the woodworks. So this may get interesting going forward.
Yeah. I mean, look, I believe in communicating. I believe in talking. That's why I went to Rue Rose's house and I brought his source and Brian. I wanted to talk about it. I believe in communicating, not hiding. I tell that to the anonymous texters and Facebook pages all the time. Just tell me who you are. Let's talk about it. Right. But, I appreciate Keith Olsen for coming on and using his real name and being respectful, Keith, and not saying anything rude and derogatory and stuff, I
have no idea what that means.
He does. Namaste.
Is that an Irish blessing, Keith?
Oh, yeah. Thank me. I thanked you, Danny. I did. But I'm going to thank you again. Thank you, Danny Sullivan, for the question, because you did. I'm not even joking. You asked some good questions, man. I appreciate that. That did. Good questions there.
Just, real quick, ask
would have
Keith
been
what
great to
he
get
means
an
by
answer.
it was dismissed. Because that could be, a play on words. All cases are inevitably dismissed. A ruling is made and the case ends.
And then everybody, even the people, are dismissed. Get out the court.
That's what I'm saying. So what does he mean by that?
Well, I guess I'm assuming he's meaning that it went nowhere, and essentially that it was dismissed because they didn't have any merit, right? His case had no merit, and they said, "Get out of it."
Well, that's my understanding is that that's not what happened. The court.
That's what he's saying, dude. The lawsuit was thrown out. So
okay, my information is different. So
Ray lost. Period.
Well, I'll have to get in touch with him then.
Yeah, and Ray Montero, if you happen to be listening, maybe you can comment. That'd be great. Why would Keith Olsen say you lost and Anthony DiMaggio say you won? Where's the discrepancy there?
Here's what my understanding is. The courts confirmed that what he was doing was protected by the First Amendment, and that his First Amendment right was violated. That it's that simple. That's what I was told. Okay, to me, that means he wins the case. I don't know what legal mumbo jumbo was used at the end of the case, but apparently it was a precedent-setting case whereby that kind of union speech is protected by the First Amendment, and that anybody who engages in the behavior that Keith and his goons engaged in is retaliating against someone, for speaking out during union proceedings like that. So Ray won. That's what I was told.
Well, I mean, and this
that's what it
in the appeal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, in the appeal here, I mean, they did dismiss. Well, they overturned or stated that that he had merit to his case and that it should move forward. They didn't basically say that he won here. They just basically made a decision on it moving forward when it was thrown out or dismissed initially, right? And then now was the third one. That's what we got to find out. And so I'll be looking for that. But I tried to actually search it up while we were on here. I couldn't find anything other than the same one that we've been looking at already.
I'll tell you flat out. I got it from them. I didn't research it thoroughly because for me it was more about Mueller than Keith. And I really stopped basically reading it with with all the stuff where they're talking about the behavior that was engaged in, and then the court ruled that Mueller gets qualified immunity and basically slaps him on the wrist and dismisses him. So the rest I didn't really care about. This is what I was told by Ray. If you're saying that I'm wrong, well, you know me. Keith knows me well enough to now, now I'm going to go read every piece of literature out there on the thing. So.
Yeah, that's the only one I could find there. So maybe I'll do a little digging over the weekend. Actually, I got a busy weekend. We're putting a lot of stuff together because I'm going to have my own legal issues. Well, not issue. I'll say my issues. My issue is that I'm paying my attorney, but I'm going to have my own legal stuff with a few people here in the city of Yonkers for their CPS thing and terrorizing and harassing on Facebook using fake accounts. And then they got caught. And they probably think that I'm not going to do anything. It's funny. My attorney's actually a little pissed. Not pissed off, but he's like, okay, they want to, because Ruros tried to. My attorney did a lot of, he's a litigator. He's in the court. He litigates. He fights. He's the trial attorney, right? But years ago, back in the 90s, he did a lot of immigration stuff, and he said, he had a super huge business doing that, right? And so he was making a lot of money. But he's a litigator. He's in courts. He's always fighting, and he's handled some big cases and stuff like that. So he's like, let's do it. I'm ready. But they try to try to insult him because of that, because he did immigration stuff. Oh, you're immigration lawyer. So now he's like amped up and he's ready to let's do this. That's why he's also looking out for me. So, he goes, we're gonna be there. We're gonna go the distance. Watch. He knows the in and outs. My attorney was actually a corporate, a corporate counsel, right? Is that he was corporate counsel for a place here. I don't even want to say a place here in Westchester County, a town or city, whatever. So he knows the inner workings of city government and stuff as the attorney and all that. So my attorney is he knows his stuff. So again, I got a corporate counsel attorney, baby.
You better know the inner workings of this city.
Yeah, well, he does actually. He's very familiar with the it's some of the individuals, and he knows Brian Harrod. Brian, my guy, right, Brian? Remember, you were shaking down cities and towns, Brian, by doing exactly what you're doing now to me. This is what he was doing, terrorizing people. He actually shook down a government. Wow.
Harrod says that he can't watch live because you blocked him. So he told me that he watches through someone else. He
watches. I'm sure he does watch. He definitely does watch. Yeah, of course he does. I mean, these guys, like, literally sometimes right after the podcast, they'll go on and post some stuff. I mean, they're always watching. You can tell every little thing. I got text message about my tire from an anonymous call when I got a flat. Oh, how's that flat tire? I said, it's great. I got it done. I got it taken care of. And they patched up a lot of the potholes on Central Avenue. So I did a great thing there, right? So thank you very much. These are knucklehead idiots who are texting me, brainless idiots. They say the stupidest things, and they try to really go below the belt to hurt you. But it's not working. It's not working. Knowing Yonkers, Ray might have won, and YPD also won too. Claim no liability. Only losers were taxpayers of Yonkers. You got a great point there. Great point there. We always are the losers in these lawsuits, actually, right? Because ultimately, it's the taxpayers that pay. And, that's why some people are saying, do we really want to vote for Mike Spano? He's got a lot of lawsuits. The taxpayers going to be paying all these lawsuits left and right.
for Keith to say that I'm taking.
You should have read it before you went on. You're
Well,
being
I did
played.
read it. I mean, so I'm being played. So he's telling me that I'm taking information from a disgruntled ex-employee, or whatever. He's talking about Ray Montero. If I hadn't listened to Ray Montero, I would never have the recording of that receptionist telling me that Mueller is fudging with the doctor's appointment.
We never even got to the part where we challenged his facts.
We'll get to it next week.
Talking about
We'll
the
do
court
part
case.
2, Keith. You want to do part 2?
Well, why don't you do that? Check it out. Talk to Ray Montero. See what's going on there. Maybe he has the information that we can go over next time. And let's see what was the actual truth. But listen.
We would be sidetracking though, because however it played out between Ray and Keith is not really relevant to my story.
No, we don't have to go into a whole podcast about that, just to show that what would the outcome. Right. Not a whole podcast, right. But at the at the very least, I think what I like to think with a lot of comments and from Keith also. Keith, I appreciate you coming on. I do, man. It definitely. It makes this experience a lot better for everybody watching and us and this interview and stuff.
I agree.
And doing this podcast, it definitely does. And I mean that in a good way, Keith, in a good way. So I appreciate it and I thank you. But I'm glad that we're doing this because I think that, again, I'm come from a social worker background, my wife, and I've actually been in the field. Talking like this is very healing. And I think we as a city need to heal, right? We've been through a lot, right? And I think this is an opportunity. I'm going to go back to this. We need to come out and vote and move forward and vote for some change. Otherwise, this is what we're going to continue to be engulfed in for at least another 4 years. And so it's very important that we move forward. We move forward with change and we begin to heal as a city.
Well, Keith, I did look through the rest of that. I didn't read it word for word, the rest of that Justia page, that website that we were just at. But I did look at it. It seemed to be just, explanations of why, the way that the court ruled that they did. I'll take a closer look at it. But, Mueller did what he did. And
he gave a link there. So anyone interested, this may be the what he's referring to, I guess, the second case where he says it was dismissed and tossed out. And so now Montero, you don't think he would give you false information, right?
No, I don't.
Montero, actually, his name is familiar. Montero was a name that people would speak about on the street, actually. They're like, yeah, oh, there goes Montero. Yo, watch out for Montero. Again, I was out there in the hood. I'm a guy, not a thug, though, never been arrested, nothing domestic. And I chilled. Anyway, let's see what that brings up. Montero versus City of Yonkers. Oops. Opinion. Ray Montero, plaintiff. Keith Olson is official in the capacity because for that. See, opinion disorder. Detective Ray Montero brought this suit pursuant to 42 U.S.C. 1983, alleging that defendants retaliated against him in violation of his First Amendment rights for comments he made at 2 meetings held by the Police Association of the City of Yonkers, also known as Yonkers PBA, whatever. Defendants have moved to dismiss the amended complaint. Specifically, defendants, the City of Yonkers, Brian Moran and John Mueller, have moved to dismiss on grounds back.
You have to understand that Mueller and Moran getting qualified immunity is essentially, an affirmation of Montero's allegations against them.
Now explain that part.
It basically says, yeah, okay, so they did all this, but we're going to give them qualified immunity, which means we're not going to hold the city responsible, and they basically get a mulligan.
I did, and I could show you the searches, Keith. I was searching, Keith. See. I was searching, Keith. I wasn't lying. I try, Keith. I really try to be fair. I really do try to be fair, and I don't lie. I don't just make things up. That's not my style. But it says here dismissed without prejudice. So I did look.
Yeah, but that was the first one. That wasn't the appeal, was it? I mean, we have to take the time to read it. So what I'll do is, if he's telling me that Ray is giving me false information,
shit.
if he's telling me that Ray is giving me false information and that one of the attorneys who represented Ray is also giving me false information.
Yeah, well, this is from 2016. The second one was from 2018.
It's 2017, the second one.
Oh,
right.
17, 18-ish.
So I told you in the beginning that in the initial phases of the lawsuit, when the defendants asked for a summary judgment of dismissal, they got it. They were awarded that. It was in the appellate division where it was reversed.
Right. And so this one was in 2018 where it was reversed, right? And then the one that Keith just sent me was the 2016, which actually I did find that one, but that was the 2016 one. Right? So you have
right.
See the dates here. No, 2016. And then this one is the appeal, which is 2018.
I'm sure Ray's watching. He may even call me as soon as we're done with the podcast. And his attorney Cliff Bond told me the same thing, that it was deemed to be retaliatory, and that his speech was deemed to be protected by the First Amendment.
I'm laughing at also. That's funny. That's funny.
Well, what do you say now?
Also, I'll tell you, that's why I get along with some of you guys, because even somebody like Vinny, because I have the same sense of humor. As a detective, if I had an informant that lied to me, that person would not be my informant anymore. That's funny.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's lying, so that's what we're gonna have to find out.
Who's lying? Oh,
I don't think Ray's lying. Yeah.
Why isn't Ray commenting on here? So Keith, you're saying that that Anthony shouldn't be my informant anymore? That's what he's saying.
No, he's saying that Ray shouldn't be mine anymore.
Oh, I did about
that's what he's saying.
Well, yeah, I thought about. But that's still funny. I still thought that was.
The problem is that Keith is a known liar as well.
Past proven unreliable. Well, I'll tell you what, Keith. Listen, hey, you got a point there, Anthony. You got to speak to Ray Montero, see what's going on here. And again, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not doubting you, Anthony. I'm not doubting you, Keith. I'm not doubting Ray.
You also have to understand, Keith is a seasoned politician. He's been the PBA president for a long time, and he was involved in union politics before he was the president. He's also the president of the affiliated police associations of Westchester. So all of the police unions in Westchester, they have an association together, and he's the president of that. So he's been in the game a long time,
Who Keith Dawson, you're saying?
It was smart enough for him. It was smart of him to come on tonight and make these comments, because now he raised doubt, and maybe he's right. Maybe I should have, asked for clarification on a lot of the legal.
Let's supposed to admit that though.
No. Well, I could have looked for clarification on the legal language that's in some of those web pages, but at the end of the day, he's going to have a hard time denying.
I must be doing something right. Okay,
he's going to have a hard time denying that what I was told is true, because apparently the courts ruled that way. They said that it was an unprecedented type of case where, is union speech protected? So
Keith's getting funny. Well, look, Keith, and in your defense, Anthony, the one that you showed, Keith, was from 2016, and then the one that was appealed was 2018 or 2017, 2018. So I'm not sure.
I sent you the link to was 2017.
Right, 2017 to 2018. That's the one that we read that shows that they overturned the decision made in 2016, which is the one that Keith just sent me. So maybe there's one after that. It's got to be like 2019.
What is he saying? That a third court overturned the overturned decision? I mean.
That's what I'm assuming he's saying, that a third, because it said we overturned that decision to dismiss, right, and that they, allowed it to move forward. So now, where's that? I
got to be honest with you. I think Keith is full of shit.
Well, I think everybody knows that. That's what you think already, and I think he thinks you're full of shit, right? I'm just gonna say it for him. He's saying your info is wrong. Well, listen, we could go back and forth all day.
Right.
You can, so hopefully you get something. Okay, we're not gonna make a podcast out of it just to get the facts, right? We got to get the facts. But as it stands now, it looks like it was overturned, and that Keith got, to move forward with this case. But what I honestly, personally, I don't see the end, the resolution. I just see that he, he filed a lawsuit. It was initially dismissed. Then he went for an appeal in the second circuit, and that was over, and it was overturned, the dismissal. And so I don't see the third, but I don't see nothing after that. So that's kind of where we get stuck
here. It wasn't just overturned; it was affirmed. It was affirmed in regards to Keith Olson's behavior. I'd love to get Ray on here. I'd love to. I don't know.
It's so hard when you like the camera.
I mean, his wife still works for the city, I believe. I don't know if he's going to want to get on here and ruffle feathers.
My wife works for the city.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so hey, listen, I'll do my best. You better believe that.
Well, listen, Keith Olson, thank you. And I mean this genuinely. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Thank you for using your real name, for being respectful on here. And saying some, things that I think were important and for people to hear, and for Anthony to get, because, it's always good to have, you don't want to just be one-sided. And so I think that's good for people to see both that side. So thank you, Keith. And really thank you for not being disrespectful. Like there's some guys that come out and been disrespectful. They say stupid things. That's stupid. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate that. Anthony, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, and your truth, and the people ultimately have to decide what the truth is and where the truth lies and what's real and what's a lie. I'll say it again. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Anthony, let me know. Speak to Ray Montero, see what's that, just to kind of put that to an end, because I think that's important, right? Because you don't want to have Keith making you look like you were wrong. But it doesn't, I don't know that you were, though.
No,
From what I see, you're right, Anthony. But again, that's from what I see. From what I see, you're right. It was overturned. That's what I see.
Ruled the way it ruled, especially with respect to Mueller and Moran.
Peace and love, everyone. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate Keith. Thank you, man. And anyone else that wants to come on, please, come on, man. Let's make this a party. And let's talk about it.
Charlatan, he would have never got past Captain Keith if you weren't the PBA president, and I think you know that. So,
well, Keith, that shows that says a lot about Keith. Keith got juice. You got steam, Keith. You got Mueller commissioner. Can you get Anthony his pension back? Come on, Keith. You'll be a hero, Keith.
Ask him. Because I've been saying that I don't think he had any part in this.
Yeah, he has. He hasn't badmouthed you at all, Keith. Actually,
ask him. Did you have any role in what went on behind closed doors?
He was hired by MTA.
Yes, he was.
So, what was your question, Anthony, to Olson, to Keith Olson?
Was I right when I say that he had nothing to do with what went on with me?
I would imagine he's going to say yeah. Well, Anthony, to be fair to Keith, Anthony has mentioned, has said that you were not involved. He always did say that. He never threw you under the bus or said anything negative about you. I just said I'm full of shit. He just said I'm full of shit.
Well, yeah, I think you are. But I don't think you played any role in the setup with me. That's what I was saying, And that's what I'm asking, am I right?
Well, anyway, folks, I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics. That's Anthony DiMaggio, former Yonkers police lieutenant, 15 years on the force, impeccable record until he had that situation. And here we are. Keith Olson, president of the Yonkers PBA, well-respected police officer, well-respected man here in the city of Yonkers. Not by everyone, obviously, Anthony doesn't get along, but by a lot of other people. And so I want to give that respect to you.
With Keith.
Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate it, but you never said anything bad about me. Who, me? I said you were full of shit, Keith? I never said shit. You talking about? Are you talking to you? I don't know. I never said that.
Well, you're full of Guinness.
Oh, yeah.
How's that? Is that better? Keith.
Well, no, he said he never, I should say he never said nothing bad about you in the situation that he went through and said that you did it, you were a piece of crap for that. Now, today is a different story because you were on here. Yeah, never until now. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Never until now. Yeah, he did. I mean, I don't remember. Maybe he did. I don't remember, but yeah. I like that. I like the kid. I like that. I think you're a funny guy. Man, can't we all just get along like the great Rodney King once said when he was beat down by a bunch of LAPD officers? I just thought it was funny.
All right, Freddie, I'll be in touch, man.
I'm gonna get out of here too. Folks, I'm Freddie Vasquez. Thank you for joining me. Keith, thank you everyone for the comments and questions. I'm up out of here. Anthony, I'll see you next week. Take care.
All right.
Freddie wins.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Fatality.
Thank you, folks. And again, as it stands now, Anthony was right. That's what I just want to leave it like that. As it stands now, you were right. It was overturned. Just got to make that point. Thank you, folks. I'm Freddie Vasquez. I'm up out of here. Peace out.
Freddie wins. Fatality.
Oh, and just one thing, folks. Listen to this woman and take her advice, if anything else.
In another one, Mr. Rubo lied to me, and I don't vote for a person that lied to me. Thank you very much.
Freddie wins.
Remember, and don't forget, she's very wise. Folks, I'm out of here. Peace out. Anthony, see you later. Alligator. That was Anthony DiMaggio, a 15-year veteran of the Yonkers Police Department, again, telling his story. Keith Olsen, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you. I do. I definitely appreciate everyone who comes on, watches, and comments, and is respectful, doesn't hide who they are. You know, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Be safe out there, guys. Yonkers Police Department, much respect to you guys. Love you guys. Everybody loves you guys. You know what I'm saying? But we need change. Come out and vote this year. June, primaries. Make sure you come out and vote, because I think, honestly, a lot of these issues that we have here in the city of Yonkers, stuff like this that we just discussed tonight, starts at the very, very, very top. They create this division and these problems among us folks, and we need to change this, right? It has to start this year, 2023. Let's vote. June. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Romero, thank you. And it's 2 hours, yo. Wow, I think that's my longest show. And I had a good viewing the entire time. So thank you for everyone who watched. Thank you, Romero. I appreciate it. I'm Freddie Vasquez. I'm up out of here.
Freddie wins.
I want to end this quick because I'm greedy and I want some of the butter chicken.
That's crazy. That's our majority leader, Tasha Diaz.
I want to end this quick because I'm greedy and I want some of the butter chicken. So thank you.
Are we?
Who's this guy?
Let's make it happen, guys. Make me happy today.
By the way, I will be posting emails that I sent to various elected officials with documentation showing Rui Ben Rose of the Yonkers Voice conviction for child sex crimes, and the report where he had child pornography on his computer, whatever became of that, whatever became of the victim in the video that he watched several times. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Peace out. Shame on you, officials. Shame on you, Lakeisha Collins-Bellamy, for promoting a pedophile and encouraging people to pay him to come on his show or his whatever. You guys pay him. Shame on you guys. He's a pedophile.